up? Welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to get faster as a hairstylist and maybe some reasons why you're not very fast in the first place. So let's go. I am excited about this topic because this is something that I get asked in my DMs all the time. And this is actually a topic that a lot of you guys have requested on how to get faster behind the chair as a hairstylist. And so maybe you're watching this video and maybe you felt like, like I'm just not that fast when I'm doing my color services, or I cut hair really slow, or I'm not as fast as my coworkers, or people comment that I take too long, or I struggle with keeping up and making my services go by quickly, and I feel like I'm making my clients just sit there forever. If you've ever had one of those thoughts that I'm so slow, then this video is for you, and I'm gonna be sharing with you guys some advice and practical tips on how you can get faster as a hairstylist and maybe some reasons why you're not very fast in the first place. But first, before we get started, let me introduce myself. If this is our first time hanging out, my name is Jamie Dana, and I help hairstylists grow their businesses behind the chair through things like Instagram, business advice, and some really easy go-to practical techniques that you can use in the salon every single day. So let's get into it. So first, I'm gonna start with some advice, and then I'm gonna share with you guys some actual practical tips, because if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I like to have a step-by-step method of something that you can walk away with this video implementing into your business or into your hair techniques. So first, let's start with my practical advice. Here's the deal. If you feel like you are slow behind the chair, you're not alone. In fact, I'm actually really slow behind the chair. Most people don't realize that I take a long time with my services. And if you've watched any of my other hair technique videos, you might have heard me say, hey, this took me an hour and a half to apply, or this took me an hour to apply, or this whole service took me X amount of hours. And I don't always include it in every single one of my videos because honestly, I just forget. But I want you to know that I do take a lot of time with my services. In fact, to do a full highlight, the ones that I show here on my YouTube channel, that sometimes can take me anywhere from an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to apply just the foils. Then you gotta add in the processing time and the blow dry time and all that stuff. I do take a long time with my services. And in fact, I used to get down on myself thinking that I should be faster, or I shouldn't take as long, or I felt bad making my clients sit there. But what I realized was the reason why I was taking so long was because my work got a lot more detailed and I took just a little bit more time applying the color than I used to back in the day. So back in the day when I first became a hairstylist, there were just basic things like partial highlights. Sometimes a full highlight would come in, but most of my clients were partial highlights. I would do root touch-ups, I would do haircuts. But at the time, my work wasn't that in-depth. It was just like bust them out, get the clients through the door, and it wasn't that I didn't care, it just was the fact that the industry wasn't as evolved as it is today. And so I would do things like services, and a partial highlight would take me 45 minutes to apply, and a full highlight would take me an hour to apply, and a haircut would take me 15 minutes, and blow dry would take me 30 minutes. And I just wasn't as detailed back then as I am now. So as I started to get better as a hairstylist and I got more detailed with my work, things took me longer. So a partial highlight that used to take me 35, 40 minutes to apply now took me an hour to apply. A full highlight that used to take me an hour to apply now took me an hour to an hour 15, depending on the client's hair, because I cared so much about getting the details. I cared more about the hairline. I put in a lot more foils and I got a lot more detailed with my work. Now, there were certain things that I did get faster at, such as root touch-ups, sometimes blow dries, curling, certain things like that I did get faster at, but there were other parts of the services that took me longer just because I was a lot more detailed and I put in a lot more work into applying the color. And then especially when services came along like balayage services or foliage services, those didn't just take an hour and a half, 2 hours like highlights used to back in the day. Now they take 3 to 3.5, sometimes even 4 hours, depending on the kind of hair that the client has or what desired outcome the client wants. And so I really had to look at my schedule and reevaluate how much time I was allotting for each service, which kind of brings me to another point is you want to make sure that you're charging for your time and charging for what you're actually bringing to the table, because at the end of the day, sometimes a partial highlight where you just would pop a couple foils around the hairline, do the mohawk section, and that was a partial highlight, that could be a cheaper service, where now if I'm doing a partial highlight, I go all the way to the back, I go all the way down, and the only part I leave out is this little back section. So that's gonna take a lot more, and I needed to charge for it. So if you guys wonder about how much to charge for your services, or you're wondering how to raise your prices, I do have a video on that. I will link both of them down below in the description box so you can check those ones out to make sure that you're charging your worth, because services are a lot more detailed than they ever used to be, and that could be a reason why you're maybe taking a little bit longer than you used to before, or you're just taking longer in general. And while we're on that subject of services are a lot more detailed, think about it. Not only are we adding in a lot more foils, we're doing special things like money pieces or the hairline, whereas before it was just like busted out, right? Or things at the shampoo bowl take a lot longer. Back in the day at the shampoo bowl, I would rinse out my highlights, I'd shampoo, condition, and we're off to go. Well, now we're adding in things like Olaplex treatments, deep conditioning treatments, my acidic milk rinse that I use. I'm doing a shadow root, I'm doing a toner or a base pump, or whatever the case might be. Things take a lot longer at the shampoo bowl than they ever used to. And so now even toners that used to sit on for 5 minutes back in the day are now sitting on for 5, 10, 20, sometimes even 30 minutes at the shampoo bowl. And so you have to make sure that you're allotting yourself time for that stuff, and it's okay if it takes you longer, because what clients' expectations and services nowadays are just different than they used to be back in the day. And my last bit of practical advice is it's okay. I just want you to plan accordingly and charge accordingly. So if something does take you 3 hours and you're doing your best to get it done in 3 hours, charge for that. And plan accordingly. Don't try to squeeze that 3-hour service into a 2.5-hour service, because it's really going to mess up your day. You're gonna feel behind, and ultimately that's when you're gonna feel like you're too slow because you didn't allot the amount of time that you needed to complete the service. Okay, so now let's talk about some practical tips to actually get faster. So practical tip number 1 is practice, practice, practice. I can't say this enough. Here's the deal. When you first start out in the industry, maybe you're a cosmetology student, maybe you're an assistant right now, or maybe you've been in the industry for a long time, but no matter where you're at in the industry, you always have to be practicing. And the only way that you're ever gonna get better or faster at what you're doing is if you're practicing it on a regular basis. So if there's a certain service that you feel like you're really slow at, what I would encourage you to do would be maybe bring in a model where you charge them just a color fee, or maybe you do it for free. Also, this is a great time to get some Instagram content while you're at it. But aside from that, I want you to bring in a model from a service that maybe you don't feel like you're very fast at. Maybe that's full highlights for you, or foliage, or balayage, or even just the hairline around the hair. I want you to bring in a model for that particular service, and I want you to analyze, okay, how can I make this faster? I want you to practice. I want you to kind of think about, what could I do to make this service faster? And I promise you, if you do that on a regular basis, even just whipping out a doll head and practicing just taking your sections, clipping your sections, putting in the foils, bringing the hair down, combing the hair out, all of that kind of stuff, it's the dexterity in your hands. If you're practicing it, if you're doing it more often, you will get faster. And in fact, when I first started out in the industry, I felt slow because I just didn't have enough practice under my belt. And they say that it takes around 10,000 hours, which is about 10 years of doing something deliberately over and over and over again to become an expert or a master at it. And so if you're in the early stages of your career, chances are you're not gonna be a master at it yet. You have to keep doing it. You have to keep practicing. And when I first started out, I was nowhere near as fast as what I got to be. And then, like I said, I actually got slower because I was more detailed with it. And as my work grew, my work only got that much more amazing. And what I used to do in the beginning of my career was not even in comparison to what I did towards the end and what I do today. And so things get better. You will get faster, but you just gotta keep practicing. Practical tip number 2 is reevaluate your services. So I want you to think about, maybe when you bring in that model, or even as you're doing a client this week, I want you to think, how can I make this faster? So often I see other hairstylists and they're sectioning out the hair and they're clipping it up and they clip it away and then they foil some hair and then they clip it every single time. So they're putting in a foil, clipping it every single time. And if you're doing things like that, that's going to slow you down. And so I want you just to look at your systems that you have going on. Every single time you do a partial highlight, is there something that can make it faster? Maybe you're not having to clip it up every single time. So is there a way to position the client's head or resection so that you're not having to clip it up every time? That's actually why I highlight backwards, so that I'm not having to clip the hair every single time. So if you're wondering how to do that, click below. I definitely will have a link there in the description box on how I do a full highlight. But you guys are gonna see, I don't clip the hair every single time. Sometimes I do, but it's really fast. You'll also notice the way that I foil is I'm not folding the foils a billion times. I fold them once and I move on. Because what takes time is folding the foil, then folding the corners, and taking your comb and folding it. And yeah, that can look really nice. And if that's the way that you foil, no big deal. But doing that for every single foil, even if it takes 2 to 3 extra seconds, that's gonna add on to your time. So just reevaluate your services, reevaluate the way that you do things, and ask yourself, is there a more efficient way that I could do things? Another thing that I like to do is, while my client is maybe at the shampoo bowl with their toner on, I'll go back to my station, set it up for my haircut, set up my blow dryer, get my curling iron out, so that I'm not having to do that while my client is sitting there waiting. Because again, those are those little things that sometimes can take time away from the service that maybe adds up to 5 minutes, but 5 extra minutes at the end of your client's appointment can feel like a lot of time. That could be the difference between you being able to explain a retail product to them, or checking them out without feeling rushed, or even getting an extra Instagram photo. So reevaluate your services, reevaluate what you're doing, and ask yourself, is there any ways that I can make some adjustments to make myself a little quicker? And practical tip number 3 is be okay with being slow. I think so often we compare ourselves to other hairstylists, maybe someone we saw on Instagram, or another coworker, or the salon owner, and we get down on ourselves because we're like, well, they can do an entire highlight, cut, and color service in an hour and a half. And I remember looking at coworkers that I used to work with and think, how do they do it so quickly? And what I realized was they were just busting out the service. They would put in maybe like 10 foils on the top, 2 foils on the side, get their client in and out, purple shampoo, they wouldn't tone, they would just go really quick with the blow dry, really quick, fast style, and their client felt rushed. They would use higher developers in order to get the client out sooner. And ultimately, what I realized as a stylist was I didn't want to do that. I liked spending the time adding in those details, putting in more foils, toning my client for that extra 5 minutes, or giving them that extra scalp massage. Those were things that to me made the customer experience that much better and made my work that much better. So I was okay with being slower than maybe some of my other coworkers, because ultimately I knew the service that I was giving was a service that I could feel proud of. So I know that it doesn't feel like a practical tip, but I want you to shift your mindset, and instead of feeling like I'm so slow, I'm a failure as a hairstylist, I want you to think about the value that you're adding to your customer experience, the amazing work that you're giving to your clients, and how much happier they are with their hair because you're taking that little extra time and that little extra care for them. So be okay with it taking a little bit longer and being a little bit slower. All right, so I hope that this video was helpful for you. I know that this question comes up so often, and I hope that this gave you just a little bit different perspective on how you don't necessarily have to be the fastest stylist in your salon or the fastest stylist at all. It's okay taking time and putting in a little extra work for your clients. As always, if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, make sure to do that right now. Turn on the little notification bell because I want to make sure that you know when I have new videos coming out every single week. Every week I release either a new hair technique video, a business advice video, or something that's going to help your business as a hairstylist, and you're not going to want to miss them. And if you haven't already come over to Instagram and said hi, please come over, send me a DM. I love knowing that you're watching these videos, and I know I say this at the end of every video that I do, but I truly love connecting with you. So please come say hi. I respond to all of my DMs, and I would love to chat with you. And last but not least, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that it was helpful for you, and I'll see you guys next time.